when you think of childhood today, images of plastic toys, video games, or flashing screens might come to mind. But if you were to step back in time to the Middle Ages, you'd find a childhood shaped by very different materials, rules, and rhythms of life. Children didn't have the luxury of mass-produced toys, nor the constant flood of entertainment at their fingertips. Yet their days were not without laughter, aims, and play. Instead, they crafted joy from what they had: sticks, stones, scraps of cloth, or even the imagination sparked by watching adults go about their daily tasks. The medieval world was not kind to children in many ways. Life was harder, shorter, and more dangerous than what we know now. But within those constraints, childhood still held space for fun. Play was not just amusement, it was also practice. Children rehearsed the roles they would one day grow into. Whether that meant swinging a wooden sword in preparation for knighthood, or learning sewing skills through doll play. In this script, we'll explore the curious, sometimes delightful, sometimes odd objects and games that entertained children in the Middle Ages. You'll discover how something as simple as a carved wooden figure could hold the power of imagination, or how a muddy street might transform into a playground. And through it all, you'll see that while centuries have passed, the desire to play is timeless. Let us begin with one of the simplest, yet most enduring forms of childhood joy, the doll. Section 1. Dolls of wood, rag, and clay. Dolls are among the oldest playthings in human history, and the Middle Ages were no exception. Archaeological digs across Europe have uncovered doll fragments that tell us how medieval children crafted their little companions, often with the same care adults put into their work. These dolls were not merely toys, but sometimes carried symbolic weight, teaching children about family roles, fashion, or even spiritual lessons. Most dolls were homemade, often by parents or siblings. Imagine a child receiving a figure carved from a piece of wood. A simple silhouette with rough features, perhaps painted with natural pigments to give it eyes and a smile. Others were made from rags sewn together, stuffed with straw or wool to give them shape. In some wealthier households, clay was molded into more detailed forms, sometimes baked to last longer. And for the most privileged families, there were dolls crafted with remarkable skill. Wooden bodies with jointed limbs, tiny painted faces, and even miniature clothing, stitched to reflect the styles worn by nobles. These dolls weren't just static objects. They came alive in the games children played. Just as children today invent elaborate scenarios for their toys, medieval children used their dolls to stage family scenes, market days, or even small pageants that mirrored the festivals they watched adults perform. For a peasant child, the doll might work alongside them, carrying imaginary firewood or tending imaginary sheep. For the child of a knight or noble, the doll could be dressed in miniature gowns, representing courtly life and rituals. Some historians suggest that dolls also acted as practice tools. Girls often learned to sew by stitching clothing for their dolls, while boys might carve simple wooden figures as an introduction to working with tools. In this way, play merged with preparation, giving children skills that would serve them as adults. There's also a fascinating spiritual layer. In an age when religion saturated every corner of life, even dolls could reflect faith. Some dolls were shaped like saints or angels, offering a way for children to connect to stories from church teachings. Others were simple baby dolls, used by girls to mimic motherhood, a reflection of the expectation that they would one day take on family roles. What's striking is the sense of continuity. A child holding a rag doll in a medieval cottage might look very different from a child clutching a modern plastic toy. But the heart of the play, the desire to nurture, to imagine, to tell stories, remains the same. These simple figures of wood, clay, and cloth weren't just objects. They were companions, reflections of culture, and bridges to the adult world that waited just beyond childhood. Section 2. Games of Strategy. Boards, grids, and endless moves. If dolls reflected the nurturing and imaginative side of childhood in the Middle Ages, then board games revealed another aspect of play, the training of the mind. In an era where life was structured by hierarchy, ritual, and the cycle of work, games offered children an escape into patterns of strategy, chance, and logic. Some of the most enduring board games of all time, chess, checkers, nine men's Morris, were staples of medieval play. And while not every child had the luxury of owning a carved wooden game board, the passion for strategy ran deep, with simple markings scratched into a table or etched into the dirt serving just as well. Nine men's Morris, the peasant's chess. Among the most popular medieval games was Nine Men's Morris, a game that dates back to the Roman Empire and found lasting popularity throughout the Middle Ages. Its appeal lay in its elegant simplicity. The game was played on a square grid of intersecting lines, usually scratched onto a piece of wood, stone, or even into a church pew. Each player began with 9 pieces, often small pebbles, beans, or bits of bone, and the goal was to align 3 of them in a row, a mill. Achieving this allowed a player to capture one of their opponent's pieces, slowly whittling them down until victory was assured. Children played it as eagerly as adults, learning the balance between defense and attack, patience and boldness. Archaeologists have found Morris boards carved into monastery cloisters, castle walls, and the wooden benches of medieval taverns, showing just how widespread the game was. Imagine 2 young boys sitting cross-legged in the dust, their pieces nothing more than scraps of broken pottery, concentrating as fiercely on their little battle of wits as any knight preparing for war. Chess, the noble's training ground. For the children of nobility, chess was the supreme game of the mind. Introduced into Europe from the Islamic world in the early Middle Ages, chess became not only entertainment, but also a metaphor for society itself. Every piece symbolized a role within the feudal order: kings, queens, knights, bishops, pawns. To play was to understand the movement of power, hierarchy, and strategy. For noble boys destined to lead men into battle, chess offered a mental training ground. It taught foresight, patience, and the ability to predict an opponent's move before it happened. For noble girls, who were often educated alongside their brothers in the upper classes, chess also became a pastime, sometimes even a way to showcase wit and intelligence in a social setting. Chronicles record instances of ladies besting knights in games, earning admiration for their cleverness. Children who couldn't afford ornate chess sets improvised. Where a noble household might have a carved set of ivory or wood with pieces shaped like tiny soldiers and horses, poorer families might carve simple tokens from bone or whittle them from scraps of wood. The board itself could be scratched onto a flat surface or stitched into a piece of cloth that could be rolled up when not in use. Dice games and chance. Of course, not all games demanded patience and strategy. Children were drawn, as they are today, to games of chance. Dice, often carved from bone, horn, or wood, were common in medieval Europe. While adults often gambled with them, sometimes leading to stern warnings from the church, children played dice in simpler forms, throwing to see who could get the highest score. These games had a thrilling sense of unpredictability, and even if the church frowned upon dice, their popularity endured. Sometimes, dice games blended with storytelling. A child might roll dice to decide which quest a doll or figure should go on, or to add excitement to an imaginary adventure. In this way, strategy and chance combined, creating games that were both structured and wildly unpredictable. Fox and Geese. A game of the hunt. Another beloved medieval game was Fox and Geese, which mimicked the drama of predator and prey. Played on a cross-shaped board with a set of pegs, the game pitted one fox against a group of geese. The geese attempted to corner the fox, while the fox tried to capture them. Children loved this game because it mirrored the natural world they knew so well. Flocks of geese grazing, a sly predator lurking nearby. The game also reflected the values of strategy and persistence. The fox required cunning, while the geese demanded cooperation. It's easy to picture a group of medieval children crouched together around a board carved into a wooden table, squealing with delight as the fox made a daring leap, or groaning in frustration when the geese trapped it. Play as preparation. For medieval children, these games were not only about amusement, they were also preparation. Life in the Middle Ages was structured by roles, duties, and survival. A peasant child might learn about patience and resourcefulness through Nine Men's Morris. A noble child might sharpen their mind and wit with chess. Even dice games offered lessons in the unpredictability of fortune, a concept deeply embedded in medieval life. And yet, despite these deeper meanings, the joy of the games was immediate and simple, the act of sitting with a friend or sibling. The hush of concentration, the sudden shout of triumph. All of these feelings are as recognizable now as they were hundreds of years ago. In an age without television or electronic distractions, board games were a way of drawing people together, of filling long winter evenings by the hearth or passing quiet hours on a Sunday afternoon. They were objects of imagination, symbols of society, and bridges between childhood fun and adult responsibility. Section 3. Toys from Nature, Simple Joys in Sticks, Hoops, and Stones. When we think of the Middle Ages, it is easy to picture castles and knights, but the daily lives of children were filled with far simpler pleasures. One of the most common sources of playthings came directly from nature itself. Sticks, stones, feathers, nuts, and bits of clay were transformed by imagination into toys. In a time when money was scarce and luxuries were rare, the earth itself became a generous supplier of amusement. Children could be seen picking up smooth pebbles by a stream, choosing just the right ones to skip across the water or to use later in a game. A piece of driftwood might be held like a sword, a shield, or even a doll. A curled-up nutshell could be raced along a puddle as if it were a tiny boat. The joy lay not in the material, but in the imagination brought to it. The wooden hoop and stick. Perhaps one of the most iconic medieval toys was the hoop. A simple circle of wood or iron could provide endless entertainment. Children rolled the hoop along with a stick, running behind it to keep it balanced and moving. The faster they ran, the livelier the hoop spun, clattering across the cobblestones or skipping over grass. This game was not only common in medieval Europe, but in many parts of the world for centuries. It required balance, timing, and energy, and it turned any street into a playground. Rich children might have decorated hoops, painted or wrapped with leather, while poorer children often played with nothing more than a rough circle of wood cut from a barrel. Still, the laughter and competition were the same. Groups of children raced their hoops together, cheering each other on, seeing whose hoop would go the farthest without toppling. Sometimes they invented obstacles, guiding the hoops between stones or through a marked-out course. In a life filled with work and routine, these little bursts of fun were treasured. Leather balls and stone kicks ball games were also a favorite, though the balls themselves were far from the polished leather spheres we know today. In the Middle Ages, balls could be made of stuffed rags, sewn leather filled with wool, or even pig bladders inflated and tied off. Despite their humble construction, they bounced well enough to inspire countless games. Children played simple catch, tossing the ball back and forth. Others used the balls for kicking games, forming early versions of football-like play. Villages sometimes allowed group games in open fields, where dozens of children and even adults would chase after a single ball in chaotic fun. Smaller children played their own gentler versions, rolling a ball back and forth on the ground, squealing with delight when it rolled out of reach. Stone kicking games were another variation, especially where a proper ball could not be found. Children set up a small path, and one player would kick a smooth stone through it, trying to reach the end without stepping out of bounds. It was simple, it cost nothing, and it could keep them entertained for hours. Whistles, pipes, and noisemakers. Children have always loved making noise, and medieval children were no exception. Simple whistles carved from reeds or bits of wood were common. Shepherd boys, in particular, made their own little flutes, whittling them carefully and testing the sound until they were satisfied. Some of these instruments were more toy than tool. A child with a reed whistle could run around pretending to be a musician, adding a cheerful soundtrack to games. Others blew into hollow bird bones or fashioned crude rattles from dried gourds filled with seeds. Though adults might have shaken their heads at the noise, the sounds of laughter and whistling were part of daily life. In towns, wandering entertainers sometimes gave children tiny pipes or wooden clappers, imitating the larger instruments used in festivals. These toys allowed children to mimic the adults they admired, musicians, performers, or even the clergy who chanted in church. Stick swords and wooden shields. For boys dreaming of knighthood, or simply caught up in stories told by traveling minstrels, sticks became swords. With one hand gripping a sturdy branch and the other carrying a rough shield made of bark or an old piece of wood, they staged endless mock battles. Sometimes siblings fought each other in playful duels, while other times groups of children joined together, forming armies. These were not always violent or rough games. Often they were full of laughter, exaggerated movements, and theatrical falls. A stick could be a weapon one moment, a staff for herding geese the next, or even a magic wand in an invented tale. For girls, too, sticks and small tools held imaginative value. A smooth stick could be a stirring spoon in a make-believe kitchen, or the mast of a little ship built from leaves and twigs. Clay, dirt, and earthy creations. Clay was another beloved material. Children molded tiny figures, animals, people, or even small dishes. In towns where potters worked, children sometimes played with scraps of discarded clay, shaping them into toys while watching adults craft the real wares. In villages, they dug into riverbanks for their own supply, wetting it with water to soften it. These clay toys often crumbled quickly, but that was part of the fun. They could make something new the next day, experimenting with shapes and decorations. Small clay balls, marbles, or anime figures were among the simplest joys of medieval childhood. Dirt itself offered endless play. Children scratched patterns into the ground, made tracks for racing pebbles, or built small mud houses. After rain, puddles became worlds of their own, where floating nutshells or sticks could be guided like boats. Joy without cost. What is striking about these simple toys is how little they required beyond imagination. While modern children are surrounded by manufactured playthings, medieval children found joy in the most ordinary objects. A hoop, a stick, a smooth stone. These were treasures, transformed by laughter and companionship. Whether in the shadow of a castle, in the yard of a farmhouse, or on the dusty streets of a village, these toys connected children across classes. They all knew the thrill of chasing a hoop, the satisfaction of carving a whistle, the fun of rolling a ball back and forth. Play was the great equalizer, a moment when imagination mattered more than wealth. And so, when we picture childhood in the Middle Ages, we should not only imagine solemn lessons or hard chores. We should also hear the whistle of a hoop rolling along the road, the sharp call of a reed flute, the laughter of children chasing a ball made from rags. These were the sounds of joy, as timeless as the games themselves. Section 4. Seasonal Games and Festival Fun. Play in the rhythm of the year. In the Middle Ages, life moved with the seasons. Planting, harvest, holy days, and village festivals set the rhythm of the year. And for children, each turning of the calendar brought new chances to play. Festivals were not only for adults, they were moments of gathering, of joy, and of release. They offered children the chance to join in games that were larger, louder, and more spectacular than their daily amusements with sticks, hoops, or clay. Imagine the great square of a medieval town on market day, stalls full of spices and cloth, jugglers performing, musicians playing pipes and drums. Children, usually busy with chores, suddenly found themselves surrounded by colors, sounds, and excitement. Here, they invented games, mimicked the performers, and sometimes took part in competitions designed just for them. Winter's games, snow, ice, and merriment. In winter, when snow blanketed the ground, children's games took on a different flavor. Snowball fights were as beloved then as they are now, with children shaping icy spheres and running through the streets in playful battles. Wooden sleds were carved, often nothing more than a flat board or curved plank, but fast enough to send squeals of joy down snowy hills. Some towns froze ponds intentionally for skating, and while skates were not the polished blades of today, bones tied to shoes served the same purpose. Gliding across the ice was both thrilling and slightly dangerous, yet children relished the risk. In villages, even sliding across frozen patches of ground with leather-soled shoes became a playful contest. Winter festivals, tied to Christmas or New Year's, often included masquerades, with children dressing up in playful costumes, parading alongside adults. They carried wooden masks, animal horns, or even painted faces, turning the streets into a stage of wonder and laughter. Spring, renewal, and May games. With spring came new life, and with it, new games. May Day was especially joyous in much of Europe. Villages decorated maypoles with ribbons, flowers, and greenery. And while adults danced in circles, children invented their own smaller versions. A simple stick in the ground, with ribbons tied at the top, was enough to bring them hours of laughter as they skipped around it, weaving patterns of color. Spring also meant outdoor races and contests. Children raced barefoot across fields, competed in leaping games, or rolled hoops along grassy hills. In some places, egg-rolling contests became a seasonal pastime, where children raced decorated eggs down slopes to see whose would go farthest without breaking. Shepherd children, often tending flocks in spring pastures, turned their idle moments into playful invention. They braided flowers into garlands, created whistles from fresh shoots, and played catching games across the green fields, their laughter carried by the breeze. Summer, games of light and warmth. Summer was perhaps the richest season for play. With longer days and more freedom, children spent hours outdoors. Festivals tied to midsummer included bonfires, music, and sometimes processions through the streets. Children imitated these rituals, carrying their own small torches or lanterns made from hollowed turnips, pretending to be part of the grand spectacle. Village fairs also flourished in summer, bringing jugglers, acrobats, and storytellers. Children often copied what they saw, balancing on fences, tumbling clumsily, or attempting to juggle stones. It was a time when skill, laughter, and daring mixed freely. Water games were also beloved. In rivers and streams, children splashed, raced floating sticks, or built makeshift dams and boats. In coastal villages, children played at the water's edge, shaping castles from sand, long before the phrase "sandcastle" was ever invented. Autumn, harvest celebrations. As the leaves turned golden, harvest festivals brought another wave of play. These were times of abundance, when food was gathered and stored, and communities came together to celebrate. For children, harvest meant games with apples, nuts, and gourds. Apple bobbing, for instance, has roots stretching back centuries. Children plunged their faces into barrels of water, laughing as they tried to grasp the floating fruit with their teeth. Nuts became playthings too. Games of tossing, cracking, or winning nuts in contests were common, especially around Michaelmas or All Hallows' Eve. Some children carved little faces into turnips or other root vegetables, carrying them with candles inside as part of autumn traditions that later gave rise to familiar customs we know today. Harvest festivals also meant singing and dancing. Children joined hands in simple circle dances, clapping along with songs taught by older generations. These dances were often playful, full of skips and turns, bringing together children of all ages. Games of chance and festival prizes. Festivals often included small games of chance, some designed especially for children. A child might toss stones into a bucket for a sweet treat, or try to catch a greased piglet in a laughing crowd. These contests were light-hearted, and though not every child won a prize, the thrill of the attempt was often enough. Street entertainers sometimes organized competitions where children could show off their strength or skill. Who could jump the highest? Who could spin their hoop the longest? Even the smallest of victories earned applause, making children feel a part of the bustling celebration. The rhythm of childhood joy. What stands out when we look at these seasonal games is how deeply they were tied to the natural world and to community life. Children's play was not separated from the rhythms of adults, but woven into them. When snow fell, they joined in winter merriment. When spring blossomed, they danced with flowers. In summer, they played by rivers, and in autumn, they celebrated with apples and nuts. These games changed with the year, creating a cycle of play that mirrored the cycles of life. They were not uniform. Each village and region had its own traditions, but the laughter was universal. Whether sliding on ice, weaving ribbons, bobbing for apples, or chasing fireflies at midsummer, children found delight in the turning of time. And so, in the Middle Ages, to be a child was to live not only with chores and responsibilities, but also with joy in every season. The games they played during festivals remind us that life, even in difficult times, was never without celebration. Section 5. Indoor games, riddles, and the quiet joy of play. Not every day in the Middle Ages was filled with sunshine, village festivals, or open fields. There were rainy days when the roads turned to mud, icy winters that kept families huddled by the hearth, or long evenings when the darkness arrived early and candles burned low. During these times, children still found ways to play, often with quieter games that required imagination, patience, and cleverness. These indoor amusements remind us that childhood joy did not depend only on space or weather. It lived in the spark of creativity and the thrill of shared laughter. The hearth as playground. In most medieval homes, the hearth was the center of life. It gave warmth, cooked meals, and provided the only real light after the sun went down. Children gathered there, their toys spread out across the floor, carved wooden animals, dolls made from rags or straw, or spinning tops cut from scraps of wood. A warm fire and the presence of family made even the simplest toy feel precious. Parents and older siblings often joined in games during these times, not only as a form of entertainment, but also as a way of teaching. A carved toy horse might come with a story about real horses and farming. A doll might serve as a way to demonstrate sewing or weaving. Play and learning intertwined seamlessly, each shaping the other. Board games for young and old. Board games were surprisingly popular in medieval Europe, and while many were designed for adults, children often adapted them. Simple versions of Nine Men's Morris, a strategy game played with small stones or pegs on a grid, were scratched into wooden boards or even into the ground. Children learned by watching their elders and then tried their own games, testing wits against one another. Chess, introduced into Europe by way of the Islamic world, was a marvel for those who had access to it. Though it was not common in every household, wealthier families or those connected to monasteries might have chessboards. Children of noble households were sometimes taught chess, not just for amusement, but as a lesson in strategy and discipline. Dice games were also widespread, made from bone, antler, or carved wood. Dice brought an element of chance that thrilled children as much as it did adults. While gambling was often frowned upon, children delighted in rolling dice to decide who went first in a game, or inventing playful contests where luck determined the winner. Riddles, songs, and wordplay. When the fire burned low and hands were too tired for sewing or mending, families often turned to words for entertainment. Riddles were a favorite pastime, enjoyed by both children and adults. Some riddles were drawn from well-known collections, such as those preserved in Old English or Latin texts, while others were simple puzzles invented on the spot. A parent might ask, "I have a body without bones, a tongue without words, and I speak when the wind stirs me. What am I?" The child, after guessing, would delight in the answer, "A bell." These games not only entertained, but also sharpened memory, wit, and imagination. Children also sang songs and chanted rhymes. Some used as counting games, others simply for fun. A group of siblings might clap hands in rhythm to a chant, creating patterns of sound and movement that carried long into the evening. Many of these rhymes, though altered, have echoes in the games children still play today. Dolls, puppets, and storytelling. Dolls were not only outdoor companions, but also indoor playthings. On long evenings, children staged miniature dramas, using dolls, puppets, or even carved spoons dressed with scraps of cloth. Storytelling came alive in their hands, with knights and maidens, dragons and saints. Adults often joined in, telling folk tales or legends. In noble households, minstrels might entertain with longer tales, but in humble cottages, parents themselves carried the oral traditions. A child's puppet show, full of mismatched voices and clumsy movements, was often followed by a parent's story that deepened the magic. These shared performances bonded families, passing culture down in playful, memorable ways. Toys of skill and balance. Quiet evenings also brought games of skill. Spinning tops were favorites, and children held contests to see whose top would spin the longest on the wooden floor. Some tops were plain, others painted with colors that blurred as they spun, creating a simple but mesmerizing spectacle. Knucklebones, the ancestor of modern jacks, was another beloved game. Using the ankle bones of sheep or goats, children tossed and caught them in elaborate patterns, testing dexterity and coordination. This game could be played alone, passing the time in patient concentration, or with others in competitive rounds. Balls, too, found their way indoors. Made from stitched scraps of leather, stuffed with rags or animal hair, they were softer than outdoor balls, and children used them for tossing games that required accuracy rather than force. Learning through play. Many of these indoor games carried subtle lessons. Riddles trained the mind. Board games developed strategy. Knucklebones improved dexterity. Songs strengthened memory. In noble households, tutors sometimes disguised lessons as games, turning arithmetic into playful contests or geography into a guessing challenge. For peasant children, the lessons were woven into life itself, learning patience while sewing doll clothes, or developing quick reflexes in a spinning top competition. The medieval view of childhood was not always one of indulgence. Children had work to do, responsibilities to shoulder, but play, even indoors, was recognized as natural and beneficial. It was not wasted time. It prepared children for the adult world while also giving them joy in the moment. The comfort of togetherness. Perhaps the most touching aspect of indoor play was the togetherness it fostered. Unlike outdoor festivals or wild games, indoor amusements were shared in small circles. Siblings huddled near the fire, parents joining in, neighbors visiting with their children. It was intimate, personal, and cozy. Imagine a rainy night in a medieval village. The wind howling outside, rain pattering against the shutters, and inside, children laughing as they try to solve a riddle or spinning tops across the wooden floor. The fire glows warmly, shadows dance on the walls, and for a moment, the hardships of life outside vanish. In that small space, play created happiness. Section 6. Play like a knight, war games and training through fun. In the Middle Ages, war was never far from daily life. Castles dotted the landscape, soldiers marched through villages, and stories of knights and crusades spread across Europe. For children growing up in this world, the image of the knight, the mounted warrior clad in shining armor, was as captivating as it was unavoidable. And so, many of their games naturally imitated the roles, skills, and excitement of battle. While adults fought wars that were deadly and grim, children transformed echoes of that world into play, turning fear into fascination and hardship into joy. Wooden swords and mock battles. The most iconic toy of the medieval child was perhaps the wooden sword. Carved from scraps of wood, these swords were simple, often nothing more than a stick shaped to resemble a blade. Yet they held enormous power in a child's imagination. Boys, and sometimes adventurous girls, would brandish them as knights, heroes, or even bandits. Mock battles were common. Two children might square off in a friendly duel, testing reflexes and laughter in equal measure. Groups of children staged pretend wars, dividing into sides, defending imaginary castles, or storming makeshift forts built from logs, hay bales, or overturned baskets. Injuries did happen. Of course, wooden swords could sting, but the games were far gentler than real combat. and they offered children a way to channel their boundless energy into play. Shields, helmets, and armor of make-believe. Alongside wooden swords, children often improvised shields and helmets. A round piece of wood, the lid of a pot, or even a flat loaf board could become a shield. Proudly carried into battle, helmets were fashioned from anything that fit on the head, upside-down buckets. Leather caps, or cloth tied tightly. Some children even decorated their armor with chalk drawings or scraps of cloth to mimic the coats of arms they had seen on banners. The appeal of armor was more than just protection, it was identity. In a society where heraldry told the story of families and loyalties, even a child's crude drawing of a lion or cross gave a sense of belonging. For a few moments, they weren't just village children, they were warriors of legend. The influence of knightly training. For noble children, especially boys destined for knighthood, play and training were closely connected. A young page in a castle might be given toy weapons to prepare for real ones later. Games of wrestling, horseback riding on ponies, or tossing spears at targets began as amusements but doubled as essential lessons in strength, balance, and courage. Even simple ball games had martial undertones. Throwing, catching, and running strengthened the body for riding and fighting. The boundary between play and preparation blurred, reminding us how deeply the medieval world expected its young to grow quickly into adult roles. Archery for fun and skill. Archery, too, became both sport and play. Children in villages and towns might fashion bows from flexible branches, stringing them with twine or sinew. Arrows could be whittled from sticks, their tips blunted for safety. Shooting contests were a common form of play, with targets drawn on wooden boards, barrels, or even marks on trees. In some places, archery practice was encouraged by law, so that even games prepared children for defense. For many, however, it was simply a joyful challenge, the thrill of drawing the bow, the satisfaction of hitting the target, the laughter when an arrow went wide. Horses, hobby horses, and jousting games. One of the most beloved knightly games was jousting. Imitated with hobby horses and makeshift lances. Children crafted hobby horses from sticks with carved or cloth heads, galloping across yards and fields while shouting war cries. With 2 hobby horses and a pair of lances, sometimes no more than long sticks, children staged jousts. They charged at one another, trying to knock off a shield, a hat, or just brush past with a good laugh. Nobles often staged elaborate mock tournaments for their children. While peasant games were rougher, but no less spirited, the horse itself held special meaning. To ride was to be noble, free, and powerful. Even when the horse was a stick with a ragged mane, the joy of pretending was real. Games of strategy and siege. Children also mimicked the larger scale of war, castles, sieges, and battles. Mudbrick castles or small wooden forts were built in miniature, defended by one group and attacked by another. Stones, dirt clods, or snowballs in winter served as weapons, hurled carefully at enemy walls. Sometimes these games became surprisingly sophisticated, with tactics borrowed from watching real soldiers or hearing stories. Children learned about teamwork, strategy, and planning, all under the guise of fun. What might look like chaos to an outsider was often a carefully staged drama, complete with rules and roles. Girls and warrior play. Though medieval society often divided roles by gender, girls were not entirely absent from these games. Many joined in battles, wielding wooden swords, riding hobby horses, or helping to build forts. while they were also expected to play with dolls and learn household skills. The allure of nightly play was universal. For a child, the chance to be brave, strong, and admired was irresistible, no matter their gender. Lessons beneath the laughter. These games were more than entertainment. They reflected the values of the society around them: courage, strength, loyalty, and honor. By pretending to be knights or soldiers, children rehearsed the roles expected of them in adulthood, but in a safe, playful way. The games offered a sense of control in a world where war often brought fear and uncertainty. At the same time, they fostered resilience, teamwork, and creativity. The child with the most vivid imagination could transform a bare yard into a battlefield, a stick into a noble's sword, and a bucket into a knight's helm. These were not just games of violence, they were stories of bravery told through play. From war to wonder, if we listen closely, we can almost hear the echoes of these games: the clatter of wooden swords, the laughter after a playful defeat, the gallop of hobby horses on cobbled streets. For children of the Middle Ages, playing at war was not about cruelty, it was about wonder. It was the chance to become the heroes of their stories, to face imaginary dragons, to guard castles that existed only in their hearts. And when the games ended, when swords were set aside and children were called back to supper, they left behind not just toys, but memories, seeds of courage planted in play. Section 7. Seasonal Joy. Festival Games and Celebrations. Life in the Middle Ages was shaped by the turning of the seasons. Harvests, religious feasts, and village fairs marked the rhythm of the year, and for children, these occasions meant more than food and music. They were times of play, laughter, and freedom. Ordinary days often carried heavy responsibilities, from tending animals to running errands. But during festivals, children could revel in games that were as vibrant and varied as the celebrations themselves. Springtime games, renewal and play in bloom. Spring brought not only warmer weather, but also renewed energy for outdoor games. Fields once too muddy from winter became places to run, skip, and play. One favorite pastime was egg rolling, a game played during Easter. Children would decorate eggs, sometimes painted with simple patterns or dyed with herbs, and then roll them down hillsides. The egg that rolled the farthest without breaking was the winner. Spring festivals often included maypoles, brightly decorated with ribbons and flowers. While adults danced around them, children too joined in, weaving ribbons in patterns or simply skipping in circles. The bright colors, the scent of blossoms, and the laughter of play blended into a memory of joy that children carried long after the festival ended. Summer merriment, games of sun and speed. Summer was the season of fairs. These lively gatherings filled towns and villages with merchants, music, and entertainers. Children found endless amusements among the crowds. They played games of tag in open fields, raced each other barefoot, or competed in jumping contests. At midsummer festivals, bonfires lit up the night sky, and children invented games around them, running and leaping near the flames, daring each other to come closer, their laughter mingling with the crackling wood. Sometimes they floated flower garlands or wooden toys on rivers and streams, racing them against one another. Street performers often encouraged children to join their acts, juggling balls, mimicking acrobatics, or playing little guessing games. For a child, the fair was a playground like no other, a chance to meet new friends, taste sweet treats, and play in ways that were rare on ordinary days. Autumn festivals, games of harvest and plenty. Autumn brought the harvest, and with it, celebrations of abundance. Children, who often helped gather fruits and grains, were rewarded with playful games once the work was done. One of the most popular was apple bobbing. A barrel was filled with water, apples floated on top, and children took turns trying to catch them with their teeth. The sight of soaked faces, dripping hair, and triumphant smiles was a source of endless laughter. Harvest fairs also included simple competitions like sack races, tug-of-war, and climbing greased poles to grab small prizes at the top. For children of medieval villages, these contests were as thrilling as any knightly tournament, and the rewards, a sweet cake, a ribbon, or just pride, were treasured. As nights grew longer, autumn festivals often featured storytelling around fires. While adults told tales of saints, spirits, or far-off lands, children acted out parts of the stories in playful skits, turning myth into a form of game. Winter wonder, games in the cold and snow. Winter might seem harsh and limiting, but children found joy even in the coldest months. Snow offered endless opportunities for play: snowball fights, snow forts, and sledding on simple wooden boards or even large animal bones polished smooth by use. At Christmas, games had a special magic. One was King of the Bean, where a bean was hidden in a cake. Whoever found it in their slice was crowned king or queen for the day, often giving commands or leading small games among their friends. Children delighted in this playful reversal of roles, where the youngest might suddenly hold royal authority over all. Inside, when the weather was too bitter, board games and dice provided entertainment. Children played tables, a medieval ancestor of backgammon, or simpler dice games, where luck, laughter, and sometimes small prizes filled the room with cheer. Religious festivals and churchyard games. Religion shaped much of medieval life, and holy days offered children their own chance at celebration. After attending services, they played in churchyards, often with balls or hoops. Some festivals even included processions where children carried candles, flowers, or small banners, blending solemnity with a sense of play. At times, local priests or monks organized games for children during feast days. These might include puzzles, riddles, or storytelling contests designed to teach lessons while entertaining young minds. For many children, the churchyard was both a sacred and playful space, a place where learning and laughter intertwined. The role of community in children's play. What made festival games so special was not only the play itself, but the shared spirit of community. Children from different households and backgrounds came together, forming bonds through laughter and friendly rivalry. Festivals blurred lines between rich and poor, noble and commoner, at least for a moment. For poorer children, who might not have toys at home, these games were precious opportunities. A fair or feast day meant access to games, prizes, and experiences beyond the daily struggle of work. For wealthier children, it was a chance to play freely among peers without the rigid structure of their usual upbringing. Play as memory and tradition. The games of festivals often carried symbolic meaning that children might not fully grasp, but still cherished. Rolling eggs, bobbing for apples, crowning the bean king. These were echoes of ancient rituals, tied to fertility, abundance, or the turning of the seasons. Children, without knowing it, became part of a chain of tradition stretching back generations. In later life, those same children might recall festival games with deep nostalgia. The taste of an apple pulled dripping from a barrel, the thrill of racing in a sack, the warmth of a bonfire. These were not only childhood pleasures, but markers of time, anchoring memories in the cycle of the seasons. The calming wonder of festival games. Imagining these scenes, the colors of ribbons on a maypole, the scent of harvest apples, the sparkle of snow on a winter's night, we are reminded that play in the Middle Ages was not just about survival or training for adulthood. It was also about joy. Children embraced each season, finding in its festivals new ways to laugh, compete, and dream. In their games, they created a balance between duty and delight, between the hardships of medieval life and the simple, enduring pleasure of play. Section 8. Music, Rhythm, and the Sound of Play. When we think of childhood games in the Middle Ages, it is easy to picture running in fields, tossing balls, or carving little wooden toys. Yet one of the most important and most enchanting forms of play came not from things you could touch, but from sound itself. Music and rhythm were at the heart of medieval life, and children found endless delight in turning sound into play. Whether through singing, clapping, or crafting makeshift instruments, music became both a game and a shared joy, connecting young voices to the pulse of their communities. Singing games, voices in harmony. Children's earliest form of musical play was singing. Songs were passed down orally, changing slightly with each generation, and often adapted to the rhythms of games. A child might sing a line while others clapped in time, or they might chant a verse that accompanied a circle game. One popular form was singing while skipping or dancing. Children held hands, moved in circles, and repeated simple verses, often about animals, saints, or humorous tales. The songs were easy to remember, with catchy refrains that even the youngest could join. The beauty of these games was not perfection, but participation. Children of all ages could sing together, weaving their voices into one. Singing also turned into competition. Two groups might call and respond, seeing who could sing the loudest or hold a note the longest. Even this simple act carried joy, laughter, and the thrill of shared sound. Clapping games. Rhythm with the hands. Long before formal instruments, rhythm was created with the body. Children invented countless clapping games, pairing hand motions with songs or chants. Some were simple, two children clapping hands together in a steady beat. Others grew more complex, involving patterns, quick changes, or playful mistakes that caused bursts of laughter. These games built not only coordination, but a sense of connection. The rhythm bound the children together, their palms striking in time, their voices singing in unison. The repetition of motion and sound created a calming, almost hypnotic rhythm, something that soothed as much as it entertained. Dancing games, movement and melody. In towns and villages, music was often played at markets and festivals, and children naturally turned such sounds into games of dance. They skipped in circles, hopped to the beat, or imitated the steps of adults. Sometimes a fiddler or pipe player encouraged them, playing lively tunes while children invented their own dances, full of leaps, twirls, and laughter. Even without instruments, children danced. A group might stomp feet to create a rhythm, humming a tune as they moved. These dances were not formal or rehearsed, but playful and spontaneous, a way for children to express joy through movement. Simple instruments, toys of sound. Children of the Middle Ages rarely had access to fine instruments like lutes or harps, but they found creative ways to make sound. They carved flutes from reeds, creating simple whistles that could mimic birdsong. They tapped sticks together, shook pebbles in gourds, or beat rhythms on wooden bowls. Bones left from meals became little clappers, struck together like castanets. Hollow horns, often from cattle, were turned into trumpets, producing loud blasts that thrilled children and startled their friends. Even metal pots and pans could become drums, filling courtyards with cheerful racket. Sometimes, Children imitated the musicians they saw at fairs or in churches, while adults played elaborate tunes on fiddles or organs. Children recreated the music with their simple instruments, turning imitation into play. Musical storytelling. Games of imagination. Music often blended with storytelling. Children sang psalms that told tales of foxes stealing geese, of knights and dragons, of saints and miracles. These were not just for listening, but for acting out. One child might sing while others played roles, dramatizing the words with gestures, movement, or mock battles. This blending of story and song gave children a way to explore imagination. They weren't only singing, they were creating little performances, merging rhythm, melody, and play into one. Echo games, sound in the open air. In open fields or near stone walls, children delighted in echo games. One child would shout or sing a line, and others would repeat it, making the sound bounce across the space. Laughter came when echoes distorted the words, turning simple chants into funny phrases. These echo games were especially popular in valleys or near churches, where sound carried far. For children who lived in small, crowded houses, the chance to fill wide spaces with their voices was a freedom and joy in itself. Religious influence, sacred sounds in play. Music in the Middle Ages was deeply connected to religion, and children absorbed this influence into their play. Hymns sung in churches often found their way into playground psalms. A child might imitate a priest, chanting phrases in exaggerated tones, while others responded like a choir. Monasteries sometimes taught children plain chant, and while the practice was serious, children often turned it playful afterward, stretching the notes, singing too fast or too slow, and turning sacred sound into game. It was never meant as disrespect, but rather as a way for children to engage with what they heard daily. Why musical play mattered. Musical play was more than amusement. It taught rhythm, memory, and coordination. It built community, uniting children in sound and movement. It also gave joy in simplicity. No toys were needed, only voices, hands, and imagination. For children whose lives often held work and responsibility, music offered release. Singing together while gathering firewood or clapping rhythms after chores turned ordinary tasks into games. Music filled gaps in daily life, turning even hard times into moments of laughter and connection. The calming legacy of music in play. To imagine these children is to hear a chorus of voices across the centuries. Soft psalms rising from courtyards, clapping hands echoing in narrow streets. The shrill whistle of a reed flute on a summer evening. Music gave color and rhythm to their lives, weaving joy into both festivals and ordinary days. Even now, when children clap hands to chants or sing together in play, echoes of the medieval past remain. The games may have changed, but the spirit of musical play, the harmony of sound, laughter, and community, endures. Section 9. Animals, companions, and creatures of play. In the medieval world, animals were everywhere. They pulled plows, guarded homes, filled the forests, and walked the markets. For children, animals were not just useful creatures of the household. They were companions, teachers, and sometimes the heart of play itself. Whether through the gentle company of a pet, the mischievous chase of farm animals, or the wild imagining of mythical beasts, animals filled children's games with life and wonder. Pets and companions, dogs, cats, and birds. Though pets were not as common as today, Many medieval children grew up with animals in their homes. Dogs were the most frequent companions. They guarded the household, helped hunt, and kept children safe as they played outside. A child might throw a stick for a dog, chase it across a field, or simply lie in the grass with it, comforted by its presence. Cats, too, lived in many homes. Though their role was often practical, catching mice, still, children found delight in kittens. A little one might dangle a thread or feather, laughing as a cat leapt and pounced. Cats could be temperamental, and children learned quickly the art of gentleness, lest a scratch end the game. Birds were also treasured pets. Sometimes, children caught small songbirds and kept them in cages, listening to their songs. Pigeons, kept for communication or food, were also watched and admired. Falcons, of course, were prized by nobles, and while children of common homes rarely touched them, noble boys sometimes learned falconry from an early age, turning the training of these majestic birds into both duty and play. Playing among farm animals. For many children, farm animals were daily companions. Calves, goats, and lambs often served as playful friends. Children climbed on their backs, chased them through fields, or pretended to lead them in grand processions. Goats, especially, were both beloved and mischievous. Their curious nature made them both a joy and a challenge, nibbling at clothing, stealing bits of food, or butting gently into children who dared stand too close. Chasing goats became a game in itself, though rarely one the children won. Chickens offered a different kind of play. Children scattered grain, watching flocks rush forward, or tried to catch them, an impossible but hilarious challenge. The flapping wings and startled squawks brought endless laughter. Even pigs became part of children's play. Piglets, small and quick, invited races and games of chase. No adults valued animals for food and work. Children often viewed them as lively companions, filling hours of amusement. Imaginary beasts, dragons, unicorns, and monsters. Not all animals of children's play were real. Medieval imagination was rich with tales of dragons, unicorns, griffins, and monsters. Children, hearing these stories from parents, priests, or traveling storytellers, wove the creatures into their games. One child might pretend to be a fierce dragon, breathing imaginary fire, while others played knights, bravely battling to save a friend. Sometimes they hunted unicorns, chasing through meadows in search of a beast that only existed in their minds. The line between real and imagined was thin. A large dog could become a dragon, a goat might stand in for a unicorn, and a stick transformed into a knight's sword. Through animals, both real and mythical, children entered worlds of wonder and courage. Animal imitation games, learning through play. Children often imitated animals, not just in imagination, but in sound and movement. They crawled like bears, hopped like frogs, or flapped arms like birds. These imitation games were simple, requiring no toys, yet they gave endless amusement. Sometimes, imitation became competition. Who could crow like a rooster the loudest, or moo like a cow most convincingly? Children in groups would laugh at the attempts, the sillier, the better. Through these games, children learned observation, watching carefully how animals moved, sounded, or behaved. In many ways, such play sharpened awareness of the natural world, teaching lessons through joy. Noble children and animal play. For noble families, animals carried prestige. Children of castles sometimes had access to more exotic creatures, trained hunting dogs, falcons, or fine horses. Play was intertwined with training. Young boys were taught to ride horses early, and though serious, it often felt like play, galloping across courtyards or fields. Falconry, too, began as a noble child's training, but held elements of delight. To call a bird to one's arm, to feel the thrill of its flight, this was a game of power and elegance. Even noble girls often had small lapdogs, companions that provided comfort and amusement in quieter forms of play. Teaching responsibility through animals. While animals were playful companions, they also taught responsibility. Children were often tasked with caring for smaller creatures, feeding chickens, leading goats, or guarding sheep. In doing so, they turned work into game, racing with animals or inventing songs while tending them. This blending of responsibility and play reflected medieval life itself, where boundaries between labor and leisure were not always clear. Folklore and animal play. Animals carried symbolic meaning in medieval folklore. Foxes were clever, lions brave, hares timid. Children, hearing these tales, used animals as roles in their games. A sly child might pretend to be a fox, outsmarting the others. A brave one became the lion, standing tall and proud. Even insects became part of children's amusements, chasing butterflies, collecting beetles, or watching ants with fascination. The smallest creatures could inspire the largest wonder. Why animals were central to play. For medieval children, animals were not distant or exotic. They were daily companions, woven into every aspect of life. In cities, they filled the streets. In villages, they surrounded the homes. In castles, they symbolized status and wealth. Children found joy in every kind of animal, real, imagined, or imitated. They taught lessons of gentleness, bravery, and imagination. They provided comfort in quiet times and excitement in lively games. The calming legacy of animals in play. To imagine medieval children is to see them not alone, but in company, with dogs chasing beside them, kittens tumbling at their feet, goats darting away in laughter-filled races, or imaginary dragons rising in the fields of their minds. Animals turned play into a bridge between the natural world and imagination, offering companionship, joy, and endless wonder. Even today, when children play with pets or pretend to be wild creatures, they echo these ancient games. The bond between children and animals, whether in reality or imagination, remains one of the most timeless joys of childhood. Section 10. Seasonal games and festival play. Life in the Middle Ages was deeply tied to the rhythms of the natural world. The seasons dictated not just work, but also leisure, and for children, each time of year carried its own kind of play. From summer fields to winter ice, from spring fairs to harvest celebrations, the year unfolded as a series of opportunities to turn the world into a playground. The cycle of the seasons became the cycle of games, and each brought new joys, challenges, and traditions. Spring, a season of renewal and chase. With the thaw of winter, spring brought fresh energy to children's games. Fields opened for running, rivers flowed again, and flowers filled meadows. Children invented chase games, darting through tall grass, pretending to be hunters, knights, or even wild animals set loose. It was also a time of gathering. Children collected flowers to weave garlands, or made little crowns from blossoms, turning the act of picking into a game of competition. Who could create the prettiest chain or the longest one without breaking? Spring festivals, like May Day, gave children a chance to join in wider celebrations. Maypoles rose in village squares, wrapped with ribbons, and though the dances were led by older youth, children often imitated them nearby. For many, Spring was the season of running games and wild laughter, the air alive with the promise of warmth and light. Summer, fields, water, and endless daylight. Summer stretched long and golden, offering endless chances for play. Fields became playgrounds, rivers a source of both cooling and adventure. Children splashed in streams, skipping stones or racing floating sticks downstream. In some places, boys and girls made little boats from bark or reeds, sending them into the water like miniature fleets. Summer evenings, when work was done, brought games in the fading light. Children played tag, hide-and-seek, or circle games, often in open meadows. With longer daylight, these games stretched far into the evening, accompanied by the sound of crickets and the glow of fireflies. In towns, summer also meant markets and fairs. Traveling entertainers set up shows, and children gathered to see jugglers, acrobats, or puppet plays. Inspired, they imitated what they saw, trying to juggle apples, balancing on logs, or staging little puppet performances of their own. Autumn, games of harvest and abundance. Autumn was both busy and joyful. Harvest was hard work, and even children were expected to help, gathering fruit, gleaning grain, or carrying baskets. Yet harvest also brought abundance, and children turned tasks into games. They raced to see who could collect apples fastest, played pretend by stacking hay into forts, or made scarecrows to guard fields, sometimes competing to see whose was funniest. With harvest came festivals of Thanksgiving. These events brimmed with music, dance, and games. Children joined sack races, tug-of-war contests, or mock tournaments, echoing the grander competitions of their elders. In some villages, feasts ended with bonfires, around which children ran, sang and played until exhaustion overtook them. Autumn also brought cooler nights, encouraging quieter games indoors, board games, riddles, or story contests. But for many children, the harvest season was remembered as one of excitement, when the world overflowed with food, color, and energy. Winter, ice, snow, and hearthside play. Winter transformed children's play entirely. Snow turned the landscape into a new kind of playground. Children rolled snow into balls, not just for snowball fights, but to build little walls or figures. Some made rough sleds from wood and slid down hills, shrieking with delight. Frozen rivers and ponds gave rise to one of the most popular winter amusements, sliding on ice. Children ran and skidded across frozen surfaces, competing to see who could glide the farthest. In regions where skates made of bone existed, they were strapped to shoes, and children learned to skim across ice like early skaters. But winter also meant long hours indoors, near hearths where warmth was found. Here, games shifted to storytelling, riddles, and simple crafts. Children carved little figures from wood, wove dolls from straw, or played with dice and knuckle bones by firelight. Winter festivals, such as Christmas and the 12 days of Yuletide, added special games. Children sang carols from house to house, sometimes rewarded with treats, and joined in mumming plays, little dramas where roles of kings, fools, or beasts were acted out. Even the darkest season became rich with light, laughter, and the warmth of play. Festival games, a calendar of joy beyond the rhythms of the seasons. Medieval life was punctuated by festivals, holy days, market fairs, or local celebrations. For children, these were moments of wonder. Town squares filled with color, music, and food. Children delighted in watching acrobats or wandering minstrels, their songs and stories sparking imagination. Puppet theaters, simple yet magical, captured children's attention, inspiring them to reenact the tales, later with homemade dolls or sticks. During larger feasts, there were contests, running races, wrestling matches, or ball games, and though adults competed, children often staged their own smaller versions nearby. Festivals were also a time of indulgence, when treats like sweet cakes or roasted nuts were shared, adding flavor to the memory of play. Nature as the greatest playground. What bound all these seasonal games together was nature itself. The landscape changed with the seasons, and children responded, transforming rivers, fields, forests, and snow into playthings. Their games did not require toys or structures, only imagination and the willingness to see the world as a stage for joy. Each season carried its own charm. Spring promised new beginnings, summer brought abundance, autumn gave playful harvests, and winter offered icy adventures. Through the turning year, children learned resilience, creativity, and the ability to find delight in whatever the world provided. The timeless rhythm of play. Looking back, the cycle of seasonal play reminds us that childhood has always been a dance with time. Though centuries have passed, children today still chase in spring fields, splash in summer waters, gather autumn leaves, and make snowmen in winter. The medieval child's laughter, echoing across seasons, was not so different from the laughter we hear today. The rhythm of the year, once woven into their games, still beats within ours. Section 11. Music, Song, and Rhythm in Play. In the Middle Ages, sound was everywhere. Bells rang from churches, merchants called from market stalls, animals filled the streets with noise, and the wind whispered through forests and fields. Children, sensitive to these sounds, often found joy in making their own music, singing or creating rhythm. Music was not only a form of entertainment, but also a way to learn, communicate, and imagine. It shaped the play of children in ways both subtle and profound. Singing games and nursery rhymes. Even in the earliest years, children learned songs. Simple tunes and rhymes were passed down orally, often with a gentle, repetitive rhythm. These songs might tell stories of animals, heroic deeds, or clever tricksters. Singing often became a game. Children formed circles, holding hands, and sang while moving in rhythm. Sometimes the song dictated the movement. When the rhyme ended, someone might be chosen to perform a task or pretend to be caught in the middle. Such singing games combined memory, timing, and movement, making them both playful and educational. Nursery rhymes were also a source of amusement and comfort. A soft, repetitive song could soothe younger children, especially when played near the hearth. As they learned new verses, children developed attention, language skills, and a gentle sense of structure in their gains. Rhythm and movement. Rhythm fascinated children. Many games involved clapping, stomping, or tapping sticks to create patterns of sound. Sometimes, two children would sit facing each other, tapping palms together in a slow, methodical pattern, gradually speeding up until laughter erupted at missed beats. Even without instruments, children used what was around them. Wooden bowls became drums, stones created percussive beats, and metal tools might provide a clinking rhythm. This experimentation with sound was part of daily play, combining curiosity with creativity. Homemade instruments. For children with access to materials, simple instruments were crafted. Drums might be made from hollowed-out wood or stretched leather. Flutes could be carved from reeds. Bells, rattles, and tambourines were sometimes fashioned from small objects, shells, or pottery. Making instruments was itself a game, full of patience and discovery. Children experimented with pitch, rhythm, and resonance. They learned cause and effect, tap harder, and the sound changes. Cut the reed differently, and the note shifts. Play and learning intertwined seamlessly. Dance and music. Music often invited movement. Children danced, imitating adults or inventing their own steps. Circle dances, in particular, were popular, often sung in unison with simple lyrics. Sometimes the dance told a story, pretending to hunt, to build, or to travel on imaginary journeys. In towns and villages, children might watch traveling performers and then attempt to replicate what they had seen. Juggling, clapping, spinning, and stomping were often synchronized to the rhythm of a song, teaching coordination while keeping play joyful. Playful imitation of adult music. Medieval children often imitated adult musicians. Boys might pretend to play lutes or harps with sticks. Girls might sing along with imaginary choirs. Imitation was a central form of play, allowing children to explore roles beyond their everyday experiences. Even small performances could attract audiences of friends or siblings, encouraging confidence and creativity. Children learned the joy of entertainment and the power of sound to bring people together. Music as storytelling. Songs often carried stories, tales of heroes, mythical creatures, or everyday life. Children absorbed these stories through singing games. Each repetition reinforced memory and imagination, letting them retell tales in playful ways. Some songs included humor, teaching moral lessons gently. Others celebrated the natural world, describing animals, rivers, or the changing seasons. Music became a bridge between play, learning, and cultural tradition. Seasonal songs and festivals. Certain songs were tied to seasons or festivals. Winter carols, for instance, brought light and warmth to cold days. Summer songs echoed the buzz of bees and the flow of rivers. Autumn tunes reflected harvest, while spring melodies celebrated growth and renewal. At local fairs, children joined in music and dance, often learning new rhythms from traveling performers. Even without formal instruction, they absorbed patterns, melodies, and the joy of communal sound. Rhythm, memory, and coordination. Beyond enjoyment, musical play developed skills. Singing games improved memory. Rhythm exercises enhanced coordination, and instrument making taught focus and patience. Children learned to listen carefully, to anticipate beats, and to respond creatively. Even playful competitions, who could clap the fastest or hold a rhythm the longest, turned simple fun into valuable skill building. Through music, children discovered patterns, timing, and the beauty of harmony, the enduring magic of sound. For medieval children, music was both entertainment and connection. It linked them to nature, to festivals, to family, and to each other. Singing in circles, tapping rhythms on tables, imitating adults, or crafting tiny instruments, they explored sound as a world of endless possibility. The music of play was calming, joyful, and instructive. It offered structure to otherwise free moments and filled daily life with beauty. Children's laughter mingled with song, creating a gentle soundtrack to medieval childhood. Even now, when children play simple rhythm games, sing repetitive songs, or tap on tables to create music, they echo practices that are centuries old. The joy of sound, the delight of rhythm, and the imagination sparked by musical play are timeless. Section 12. Toys, Crafts, and Everyday Objects as Play. In the Middle Ages, children did not have stores full of brightly colored toys, yet their lives were far from lacking amusement. Everyday objects, simple crafts, and handmade items provided endless possibilities for play. From wooden figures to homemade balls, children discovered imagination in the most ordinary materials. What adults often overlooked became a world of wonder for young minds. Simple toys from wood and cloth. Wood was perhaps the most common material for toys. Children carved small figurines, often depicting animals, knights, or mythical creatures. These simple carvings became the stars of elaborate games, battles, and storytelling. Some children made tiny wagons or carts, using scraps of wood and string. They would pull these through dirt paths or pretend they were merchant carts traveling across kingdoms. Cloth dolls were also common, often made from scraps of old clothing, stuffed with straw or rags. Each doll, though simple, could carry personality, becoming a friend or companion in endless adventures. Balls and rolling games. Balls were important playthings, though rarely perfectly round or uniform. Some were sewn from cloth and stuffed with straw, others made by winding rags or leather tightly. Children kicked, threw, and rolled them in open fields or courtyards. Rolling games were especially popular. A simple stone, a round fruit, or a small ball could start a competition. Who could roll it the farthest, or knock down a line of pebbles? Such games encouraged dexterity, patience, and gentle coordination, all while sparking laughter. Homemade board games. While chess and checkers were known among the nobility, many simpler board games existed for children. Using stones, sticks, and drawn lines, they created miniature worlds on the ground. Pebbles might serve as game pieces, and grids could be carved in dirt or scratched onto wood. Games of strategy and chance helped children learn planning, counting, and observation. While not elaborate, these activities were deeply satisfying and could occupy long winter afternoons near a hearth. Crafting as play. Crafting itself was a form of play. Children wove straw, braided cords, or stitched scraps of cloth. Through these activities, they made toys, decorations, or small gifts. Braided cords might become jump ropes or pretend reins for a wooden horse. Small baskets held pebbles, seeds, or miniature objects used in games. Crafting combined skill, patience, and imagination, turning ordinary afternoons into productive play sessions. Found objects and nature. Nature was another source of play. Sticks could become swords, wands, or miniature staffs. Leaves and acorns became coins, treasures, or magic objects in imaginative games. Pebbles could form castles, armies, or obstacles in pretend battles. Even mud was not simply dirt. It became clay for figurines, ponds for floating leaf boats, or material for imaginative construction. Children transformed every object into something playful, revealing creativity hidden in the simplest forms. Seasonal crafts. Many toys and crafts were tied to the seasons. In spring, children might make crowns from flowers or weave grasses into decorations. Autumn brought colored leaves for collages. Small harvest-themed toys or pretend food made from seeds and husks. Winter inspired indoor crafts. Straw dolls, carved wooden figurines, or sewn cloth animals kept hands busy while outside was cold. Through the seasons, children adapted materials and ideas, showing both ingenuity and flexibility. Nobility and specialized toys. Children of noble families sometimes had access to finer toys. Small wooden horses with wheels, miniature swords, or intricate dolls might be found in castle nurseries. While these toys were more elaborate, the principle was the same. Imagination transformed objects into companions or tools for games. Even the wealthy children made homemade games. chessboards carved in wood or painted, musical toys, or small mechanical devices offered a combination of amusement and education. Learning through play. Every toy, every crafted object taught something. Rolling a ball developed coordination. Making a doll taught patience and fine motor skills. Crafting baskets or weaving cords encouraged problem solving. Medieval children learned practical skills while having fun, without realizing that play and education were intertwined. Storytelling and imaginative play. Objects often became central to storytelling. A stick could be a sword, a cloth scrap, a cloak, a wooden block, a castle tower. Children invented entire narratives around these simple props, creating kingdoms, forests, and adventures in their minds. Even without formal stories, children could transform a day into a magical world. A pebble might be a treasure. A small puddle could become a river to cross. Every object carried potential, and every game taught flexibility, creativity, and collaboration. Community and shared play. Many toys and objects were shared among children. Dolls, balls, or carved figures were not always owned individually. Games often required cooperation or competition, encouraging social skills. Sharing also fostered negotiation, kindness, and compromise, soft lessons embedded within play. The enduring charm of simple objects. Though modern toys are more elaborate, the essence of play remains the same. Creativity, imagination, and interaction with materials or friends create joy. Medieval Children, Section 13. Role play, family life, and village responsibilities. Children in the Middle Ages often learned about the world through imitation. Their play frequently mirrored the tasks and roles they observed among adults. From helping with chores to mimicking trades, from reenacting village festivals to acting out family roles, play was deeply intertwined with daily life. Even in games, children were absorbing knowledge, learning social norms, and exploring their place within their communities, imitating household tasks. One of the most common forms of role play involved domestic chores. Children often pretended to cook, sweep, or wash, using miniature tools or simple substitutes. Tiny clay pots, straw brooms, or wooden utensils served as props in imaginative kitchens. Through imitation, children practiced skills they would need as adults. Stirring an empty pot might seem trivial, yet it taught hand coordination and patience. Washing a doll or carefully arranging small stones as food encouraged focus and attention to detail. Play became a gentle rehearsal for real life, learning trades through play. Beyond the household, children sometimes imitated local trades. They might pretend to be blacksmiths, bakers, or carpenters, using sticks, stones, and mud as tools and materials. A stick could become a hammer, a small rock, an anvil, a hollowed log, an oven. These games were more than entertainment. They taught problem solving, fine motor skills, and an understanding of work processes. By observing adults and recreating those tasks, children internalized practical knowledge while enjoying themselves. Role play of social hierarchies. Children also explored social roles through play. Some might act as lords or knights, while others took on the roles of peasants, merchants, or villagers. This allowed them to experiment with authority. Cooperation and negotiation in a controlled and imaginative environment. Role play could reflect family life as well. A child might pretend to be a parent caring for a younger sibling or act out daily routines of their household. Such play encouraged empathy, responsibility, and understanding of family dynamics. Festivals and community mimicry. Village festivals provided inspiration for more elaborate role play. Children imitated adults in dances, processions, or mock performances. During harvest festivals, they might act as traders, jugglers, or performers, echoing what they observed. These activities reinforced the rhythms of communal life. Children learned the sequence of events in a festival, the roles people played, and the ways in which music, dance, and storytelling created cohesion within the village. Imaginary worlds and storytelling. Imagination expanded role play beyond direct imitation. Children often created their own scenarios, blending observation with fantasy. A small wooden figure might become a mythical hero. A leaf could be a crown, and a stick, a magical wand. These imaginative games allowed children to explore emotions, relationships, and problem-solving. They could act out bravery, kindness, or cleverness, testing ideas and learning lessons in a safe and playful context. Chores as games. Even real chores could become playful. Gathering firewood or carrying water might turn into races or friendly competitions. Children might pretend a heavy bundle of sticks was treasure to be delivered, or a bucket of water was a potion for a magical cure. Through these playful twists on work, children developed endurance, coordination, and imagination. They learned to find joy and creativity even in routine tasks. Collaboration and teamwork. Many role-play games required cooperation. Acting out a market, a festival, or a household involved multiple children, each taking a role. Negotiating responsibilities, taking turns, and coordinating movements became lessons in teamwork and communication. These games often mirrored real village life, where collaboration was essential for survival. In learning to play together, children also learned social skills, empathy, and patience. Seasonal role play. Role play shifted with the seasons. In winter, indoor games might revolve around cooking, sewing, or storytelling. Spring and summer allowed outdoor enactments of farming, building, or trading. Autumn harvests inspired pretend work in fields, or enactments of fairs and celebrations. Through the changing year, children experienced variety, keeping play fresh and engaging. Seasonal role play also reinforced the rhythms of life, connecting imagination with the natural world. Learning through observation. A key aspect of role play was observation. Children learned by watching adults carefully. They imitated gestures, techniques, and social norms, translating what they saw into their games. This process reinforced memory, understanding, and creativity, all while providing enjoyment. Even simple gestures, like arranging straw for a pretend bed or lining up sticks as fences, involved planning and foresight. Children developed spatial awareness and coordination, blending creativity with practical skill. Emotional and social development. Role play nurtured emotional growth. Acting as someone else encouraged empathy and perspective-taking. Children practiced kindness, cleverness, bravery, and cooperation in low-stakes environments. They also explored conflict resolution. Disagreements over roles or outcomes required negotiation and compromise. Through play, children learned the social rules of their community and the emotional skills needed to navigate relationships. The timeless nature of role play. Role play in the Middle Ages was a bridge between childhood and adult life. It allowed children to experiment safely, practice skills, and engage creatively with their environment. Though centuries have passed, children still act out adult roles, imitate tasks, and create imaginative worlds. By observing, imitating, and imagining, medieval children prepared for the responsibilities of their future while enjoying the freedom of play. The lessons learned, the stories enacted, and the skills practiced remain relevant to the joys of childhood today. Section 14. Games of luck, chance, and friendly competition. In the Middle Ages, children discovered that play could take many forms. Some games relied on skill and coordination, while others were based on chance, luck, or friendly competition. These games were simple, often requiring few materials, yet they offered excitement, anticipation, and gentle lessons about fairness and patience. Tossing games. One popular form of play involved tossing small objects. Pebbles, nuts, or seeds might be thrown into holes, circles drawn in the dirt, or cups and bowls placed at a distance. The aim was often to land the object as close as possible to a target, or to knock over another object. Tossing games encouraged focus, accuracy, and hand-eye coordination. Children quickly learned to adjust their movements, estimating distance and force. While skill improved the chances of success, luck played a part as well, making every turn exciting and unpredictable. Dice and simple chance games. Dice games existed even in medieval times, though often improvised. Small bones, carved stones, or clay pieces could serve as dice. Children might draw grids in the dirt to mark spaces, moving pieces according to the roll. These games taught counting, probability, and patience. Each roll brought anticipation, as outcomes could shift the course of play. Even when rules were simple, children experienced the thrill of chance, learning to accept victories and losses gracefully. Fortune-telling and games of chance. Some games incorporated elements of fortune-telling or prediction. Children might write symbols on small stones, spin sticks, or draw lots from a bag. The results were interpreted as clues to future events or playful outcomes within the game. Such activities combined curiosity with imagination. They allowed children to explore the unknown in a safe, playful manner. Luck and chance gave the games variety, keeping children engaged over many afternoons. Simple races and physical challenges. Competition often took the form of races or physical challenges. Running contests, jumping games, or balancing acts tested strength, coordination, and endurance. Children might race to a tree, hop over logs, or carry objects while maintaining balance. Though these games were playful, they encouraged determination and resilience. Friendly rivalry was common, with laughter and teasing marking each contest. Children learned how to compete with honor, celebrate success, and handle minor disappointment. Counting games and memory challenges. Some games involved counting or memory, combined with chance. Children might hide small objects, then take turns guessing their number or location. Others drew lots to determine teams or roles in a larger game. These exercises were gentle yet stimulating, enhancing cognitive skills. Children improved memory, observation, and logical thinking while enjoying the unpredictability of play. The randomness of chance kept each attempt fresh and engaging. Seasonal competitions. Seasons influenced competitive play. In spring, children raced through fields, chased each other in open spaces, or hopped over puddles. Summer games often took place near rivers or shaded groves, incorporating natural obstacles into contests. Autumn harvests inspired competitions around carrying small bundles of straw or counting seeds. Even in winter, children played indoor games involving counting, tossing, or prediction. The rhythm of seasons shaped the type of games, connecting play to the natural world. Role of luck in fairness. Chance-based games also taught fairness. When outcomes depended on luck, children learned to accept results without resentment. Everyone had a turn, and victories were not always determined by strength or skill alone. These lessons were subtle but valuable. By engaging with games of chance, children internalized ideas of equity, patience, and sportsmanship. They discovered that fun could come from participation itself, not only from winning. Imagination and storytelling in competition. Even competitive games involved imagination. Tossing a nut into a drawn circle could become a mission to deliver a magical seed to a castle. Dice rolls might determine the fate of an imaginary kingdom. Children often created elaborate narratives around games of chance, blending skill, luck, and storytelling. This imaginative layer added depth, making even the simplest competition memorable and meaningful. Sharing and cooperation. Many games of luck were played with friends or siblings. Children learned to negotiate turns, set rules, and resolve disputes. Cooperation was essential, especially when objects or playing spaces were shared. Through these interactions, social skills developed naturally. Children experienced friendship, collaboration, and the subtle dynamics of group play. Luck and chance ensured that games remained lighthearted, with humor and surprise marking each moment. Timeless appeal. Games of chance and competition have endured across centuries. From tossing pebbles into circles to simple dice games, children have always been drawn to the excitement of uncertainty. The joy lies not only in winning, but in the unpredictability, the suspense, and the shared laughter. In the Middle Ages, as today, such games provided a calm yet engaging rhythm to daily life. They offered lessons in fairness, patience, and resilience, all within a playful framework. The mixture of luck, skill, and imagination created a world where children could explore boundaries safely, discovering both fun and personal growth. Conclusion. Through games of chance and friendly competition, medieval children learned about the world, themselves, and each other. They embraced unpredictability, exercised skill, and nurtured imagination. Each turn, roll, or toss carried a small thrill, teaching subtle lessons about patience, cooperation, and enjoyment. Even centuries later, the simple joy of trying one's luck, testing skill, and sharing laughter with friends remains a cornerstone of childhood. Medieval children, with stones, sticks, or handmade dice, experienced the timeless magic of play, finding wonder and growth in every moment. Section 15. Outdoor adventures and the lasting charm of play. As we reach the final chapter of our journey through medieval childhood, it is worth reflecting on how play extended beyond objects, games, and structured activities. The natural world itself became a playground, offering children infinite opportunities to explore, experiment, and enjoy. Fields, forests, rivers, and village streets were not just spaces. They were the canvas for imagination, adventure, and learning. Nature as a playground. Children roamed open fields, collecting leaves, flowers, and stones. Each day brought something new: a bird's feather, a shiny pebble, or an unusual seed. These natural treasures were incorporated into games or used to craft small toys. Mud became clay, sticks became swords, and streams became rivers to navigate in miniature adventures. Playing outdoors nurtured both the body and mind. Running across meadows, climbing trees, and jumping over streams strengthened coordination and balance. At the same time, children observed the rhythms of nature, noting the seasons, the weather, and the habits of animals. Through play, they learned patience, observation, and curiosity, skills that would serve them in later life. Role of imagination. Imagination remained at the heart of outdoor adventures. Children transformed every tree stump into a fortress, every patch of grass into a battlefield, and every puddle into a pond teeming with invisible creatures. Even ordinary sticks and stones could become magical objects, carrying secret powers or special significance within a story. Through these imaginative transformations, children exercised creativity and problem-solving. They designed complex scenarios, negotiated rules with friends, and invented characters with unique personalities. Play became both an art and a training ground for the mind. Village streets and social play. Medieval streets themselves were often sites of play. Courtyards, lanes, and market squares provided space for group games, races, and performances. Children might reenact village festivals, mock battles, or marketplace interactions, learning social norms through imitation and role play. Street games encouraged cooperation and understanding of rules. Children learned to take turns, share limited resources, and resolve disputes. These social lessons were gentle yet effective, embedding values of community, fairness, and empathy. Seasonal exploration. The seasons influenced the type of outdoor play. Spring brought flower crowns, nature walks, and chasing insects. Summer invited races through fields, fishing in streams, or climbing trees to reach bird nests. Autumn offered opportunities to gather seeds, play among fallen leaves, and practice harvest-related games. Winter prompted indoor creativity, but also the occasional snowball game or ice sliding adventure. By following the rhythm of the year, children developed a deep connection with the natural environment. Each season offered new challenges, materials, and inspiration, keeping play fresh and engaging. Lessons beyond entertainment. Play in medieval times was never merely about amusement. Every activity, from tossing pebbles to acting out family roles, carried lessons in coordination, patience, creativity, and social understanding. Children learned to collaborate, resolve conflicts, and adapt to changing situations. They experienced small successes and minor setbacks, both of which fostered resilience and confidence. Even the simplest outdoor adventure taught observation skills. Watching animals, noticing changes in the weather, or learning which plants were safe to handle contributed to a child's growing knowledge of the world. Imagination, storytelling, and memory. Storytelling was a constant companion to outdoor play. Children invented narratives around natural features, objects, and each other. A hill could become a castle, a stream a dragon's river, and a group of friends a company of knights or explorers. This combination of imagination and action strengthened memory, focus, and creativity. By connecting objects, locations, and roles in their minds, children exercised cognitive skills while experiencing deep joy. Enduring charm of medieval play. Looking back, medieval childhood offers a lesson in simplicity and creativity. Without electronic devices or manufactured toys, children engaged deeply with their surroundings. They learned through observation, imagination, and imitation. Their laughter and joy emerged from the world itself, their relationships, and their own creativity. Even today, the essence of play is unchanged. Children still transform ordinary objects into toys, create adventures from imagination, and learn life lessons through games. The medieval approach reminds us that play is as much about connection and creativity as it is about entertainment. Gentle reflections. As we conclude, imagine a quiet medieval village. You see children chasing each other through fields, rolling balls across courtyards, or crafting tiny toys from sticks and clay. You hear laughter carried on the wind, see focused hands creating, and notice the thoughtful expressions of those fully absorbed in play. Every corner holds a lesson. Every object carries potential, and every game contributes to growth. The world itself is a teacher, and children are natural explorers, discovering joy, knowledge, and imagination in all that surrounds them. Outro. And now, as our journey through the world of medieval childhood comes to a gentle close, take a deep breath. Imagine the soft rustle of leaves, the warm sunlight on a field, and the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent in play. Let your mind rest with the thought of children laughing, imagining, and discovering the world in simple, timeless ways. Soon, this narration will end. Carry with you the calm, curiosity, and gentle wonder of those medieval adventures. Close your eyes, let your thoughts drift, and allow the peaceful rhythm of play, imagination, and discovery to lull you into restful sleep. Good night.